Hi, everybody. Welcome to the
Morning.
York Simcoe All Candidates Debate. This is one of the 100 debates for the environment. I would like to thank everybody for joining us today. My name is Claire Malcolmson, and I'm the Executive Director of the Rescue Lake Simcoe Coalition. You should have received an email from me earlier today that basically said the Liberal and Conservative candidates never replied to multiple invitations to this event. So I can't speak on their behalf as to why, but in order to honor the NDP candidate who is here, Benjamin Jenkins, we're going ahead with this agenda. It's just not a debate anymore because there's only one candidate here. So again, I apologize for that. We did have lots of different people and organizations asking the candidates. It wasn't that easy to find them, and then they never replied. So sorry that we don't have more candidates here. I did email everybody this afternoon who had registered by 3 to let them know that and to send links to the other debates that are being held in the Lake Simcoe watershed that do have more than one candidate. So, feel free to join those if you'd like. If you didn't get that, you can just look up 100 debates for the environment, and all of the 100 debates about the environment are listed there, and you can link through that website. So I'm just going to run through some introductory comments. So thanks again for attending. My name is Claire Malcolmson. I'm the Executive Director of the Rescue Lake Simcoe Coalition. Tonight we also have Jennifer Van Gennep, who is our comms person. She's working behind the scenes. We've organized these debates because strong environmental concerns and policies set the course for the health of our community, our waters, and the planet. Climate change is the #1 threat for public health and economy and livable communities. Tonight's candidates would have been vying for the opportunity to take this matter seriously and advocate on behalf of our shared environment at the federal level. I say that they would have been because there's only one candidate here, but I'm sure he will do his best to convince us of their ability to tackle this situation. We can no longer afford policies that exacerbate climate breakdown or delay climate action. The time to act is now. I would also like to acknowledge the traditional Indigenous territories that we're situated in the Lake Simcoe watershed. We are gathering in the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe people. Locally, we would like to honor the Chippewas Tri-Council, Romero First Nation, Georgina Island, and Beausoleil Island First Nation, and acknowledge that their ancestors were the first stewards of the land. Via the Williams Treaty and others, agreements were made that lands were meant to be shared and in a way that honors nature and the life that we've been given. History and present day issues clearly demonstrate that we are not living up to this intention or promise. To have hope for future generations, we must recognize the value in each other, reconcile for past and ongoing tragedies, and ensure compassionate care and concern for all. We also recognize the various components of our ecosystem are all interdependent. The only way forward is together. As potential members of parliament, we ask our candidates to uphold choices and policies that address truth and reconciliation. For tonight's meeting, I will review the structure very briefly. I'm asking 7 preset questions that were shared with the candidates prior to the meeting, to the debate, which is now not a debate. For each question, the candidate will have 2 minutes to respond. Jen will notify the candidate if he's run over the 2-minute time. Finally, we urge each of you to vote and to encourage other people to vote too, and to put the health and well-being of our lake and our communities and the planet at the forefront of your decision. This meeting is being recorded and it will be available on our YouTube channel sometime tomorrow. We can reply to the people who registered and send you that link if you'd like. You can also just look up YouTube, Rescue Lake Simcoe Coalition. We have lots of videos. So for the technical stuff tonight on Zoom, please use speaker view, then you will really only see me and Benjamin. Please only use the chat for technical questions. We're not adding additional questions to the 7 that we've given to the candidates so far. And I'm sure everyone will be fine, but if people are abusing the chat, then Jen will block them somehow from doing that. So we just need to make sure that everybody's being courteous and kind. So thank you to all the candidates for their community service. We wish them all the best in their campaigns. Unfortunately, there's only one here to say that too. We will start with Benjamin and Jenkins, the NDP candidate, introducing himself. So you have 2 minutes, so begin, please.
All right. I'd like to start by saying hello and thank you to everyone who helped organize this event and to everyone watching it. If you are, there's a good chance you might be feeling right now how so many people feel in the face of the monumental task ahead of us of saving our planet from the devastating impacts of reckless greed, unthinking ignorance, and sometimes outright cruelty. In the face of such an obstacle as saving our entire ecosphere, one person, one ordinary person, can wind up feeling alone, powerless, grief-stricken by the losses that we have suffered, are suffering, and which we are going to yet suffer, and feeling abandoned by the leaders meant to protect us. I know how you feel. I felt the same way. But I'm here tonight because I found an antidote to the poison of hopelessness, standing up, fighting for something, and discovering that you are not alone. Tonight, you will hear answers to questions that we should not have to ask, but which it is vitally important that we do, because our world has been sold up the river for the sake of profit margins and power. You will hear about problems that shouldn't exist, but which do, because our society is built on the back of exploited workers and marginalized peoples. You will hear about the ways in which your governments, federal, provincial, regional, have failed you and failed our planet. But it is also my hope to give you tonight some reason for hope. Because tonight, I say to you, you deserve better. You can have better, and you are not alone. Power does not willingly yield, but it can be made to. And there is no greater power than the collective action of ordinary people who realize that they are not alone. My name is Benjamin Jenkins. I am the NDP candidate for York Simcoe, and I promise that if I am elected, I will fight day and night for our communities and our environment. Thank you.
Thank you. Question 1 is a 3-part question. So we're asking that the candidate answer yes or no to each of these questions. These each deal with immediate measures the government can take to address the climate crisis while protecting the health of Canadians as we emerge from the worst of this pandemic. The questions are: 1, will you develop a new and credible plan to halt and reverse nature loss, protect species at risk, and meet Canada's commitment to protect at least 30% of land, freshwater, and ocean by 2030?
Yes.
2, will you commit to require all sectors to reduce carbon emissions by 60% by 2030 and make it law?
Yes.
Will you push your party's leadership to end all government subsidies for and investments in fossil fuel infrastructure, such as pipelines and new highways?
Yes.
So thank you. We asked the candidate to ensure, so you can elaborate on that now that you've said yes.
Yes. There's a 4th section to the question as well, I believe. Or is that the, okay.
In what you sent out, Claire, there actually is a 4th question.
Okay.
That's not in what you have. That's okay. Would you like me to read it?
If you don't mind.
Sure. And the 4th one is, will you join the all-party climate caucus to work collaboratively with all MPs from across the aisle on policy solutions?
Conditionally, yes. So yes, 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 and conditionally yes, but more than that, I will commit to making sure that when we start protecting our land and water, we protect it here. Previous governments have refused to implement protections in areas where we most need it, while provinces like Ontario, we pave more and more of our greenbelt with every year. We are destroying some of the most beautiful forests and productive farmland that our country has. A promise by the NDP cannot and will not be an empty one. It will mean that the lands you see around you today will be protected. New development will move along more sustainable and environmentally friendly lines. Our party will end all oil and gas subsidies, something our federal government spent $18 billion on last year, and we will stop financing pipelines and use that money for green energy projects instead. The reason I said conditionally on that final yes is because we cannot afford any more half measures. The Liberal government's carbon tax, for example, is helpful, but how much of the money raised by that tax was spent on the Trans Mountain Pipeline? Commitments to policy solutions must be solutions, not band-aids, not offsets left to future generations to figure out.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Question number 2. Emergency mobilizations require social cohesion, but inequality undermines such collaboration. The COVID-19 pandemic has further lifted the veil on the inequalities in our country. How do you propose to tackle the climate crisis and these inequalities at the same time? One required element of doing so is referred to as a just transition. What is the role of the federal government in assuring no one is left behind in the grand decarbonization transition before us?
So I want to start by saying thank you for asking this question, because it acknowledges something that a lot of people, comfortable people, powerful people, don't really want to acknowledge. Our society as it exists is unjust. So to transition justly, we first have to state what the cause of injustice is in our society. Wealth and power concentrated in the hands of a few people instead of distributed democratically. We all bear the consequences. Workers who produce all that we rely on, given so little a share of the wealth that they create, that they still struggle to keep a roof over their heads and food on their tables. Treaties with Indigenous peoples treated as problems to be avoided rather than the sacred oaths that they are that need to be honored. And people living with disabilities denied basic humanity, and youth and elder alike treated like inconveniences and parasites. The NDP is going to end corporate welfare for big polluters and channel those funds into unionized jobs building our new green infrastructure and guarantee they pay not just a living, but a dignified wage. We will end back to work legislation and scab hiring practices to make sure that workers, people like you, people out in the audience, people like me, keep more of the wealth that they create. We will enshrine into the law the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples so that Indigenous communities are treated as equals and partners on all matters going forward. As they are often the first to experience the dire effects of climate change and have valuable knowledge for managing biodiversity, Indigenous communities also represent vital partners in protecting our local ecosystems. We will build safe and affordable housing to give our most vulnerable security and independence and guarantee a basic income to those living with disabilities. We will make higher education free at last so that the opportunity to better oneself is no longer something that comes saddled with debt. Now, to everyone listening, I want to say, look around you. We are surrounded by injustices in one form or another, and they all arise from systems that exist to concentrate power and wealth in a few hands rather than spread it among the many. Fighting economic inequality and climate change go hand in hand. We cannot fight one without effectively fighting the other. The world does not have to be this way, and I say, you deserve better.
Thank you very much for your response. Question 3. The Canadian Environmental Protection Act is our overarching law to protect the health and environment of Canadians. The Act has not been significantly amended since 1999, despite major changes in our understanding of toxic substances in our environment. A recent bill introduced in the last Parliament, did not make it past first reading. Will you support getting this bill reintroduced, strengthened, and made a top legislative priority?
Absolutely. So I believe the bill you're referring to is Bill C-28, which has some fantastic ideas in it, some fantastic language, like guaranteeing all Canadians a right to a clean environment, a healthy environment, and the right for any person to request that a minister assess a substance for toxicity. And both of those are excellent concepts, and they absolutely need to be a part of our law. The former, because it's a right everyone deserves. It should be a basic thing that we don't even have to think about, but we do. And the latter, because it allows concerned citizens to direct the government to investigate something that they are concerned about. Where I think Bill C-28 does not go far enough, and where I would like to push it further, is extending this concept of public-driven information access and public seeking to all environmental concerns. At the moment, provincially, we've seen the government refusing to listen to public concerns or investigate environmental questions they don't want the ugly answers to. And allowing the public to demand the federal government step in guarantees that people know exactly what the costs and consequences of any and all development or anything like that will be. So that's where I would like to see that bill be reintroduced and see how it's strengthened.
Thank you. Question 4. Indigenous people play a critical role in environmental and climate solutions. Will you implement the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples and calls to action in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission? Will you invest in Indigenous-led land use planning and the establishment of Indigenous protected and conserved areas?
Yes, yes, and yes. Indigenous peoples in Canada have been treated as either tools to be wielded for territorial or resource claims. Our recent Governor General is from a band who knows a lot about that, or as obstacles in the way of natural resources. They are neither. Indigenous people are human beings, historically and presently mistreated, who are on the forefront of experiencing environmental degradation and climate change. The NDP is going to try and correct that. We will enshrine the UN Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples into law and all of the 94 calls to action of the TRC, creating a legal mandate for governments to respect the rights of Indigenous people and communities. Urgently for the environment, we will work with Indigenous communities to use their vital knowledge in maintaining the land to build biodiversity and restore biodiversity, and to build infrastructure which will not only increase the resilience of Indigenous communities, but protect the ecosystems around them that they rely upon. We'll also change how the federal government interacts with Indigenous communities. As the recent pipeline protests have shown, the consultation model currently used by the federal government is toothless. Canada's governments have historically been willing to ignore consultations wherever investor profits are on the line. The NDP is going to change that and use a consent-based model, which means that those communities will never again have unwanted developments forced upon them by private interests.
Thank you very much. Question 5. As the climate conditions worsen, the unhoused or those with precarious housing will be among the most impacted. What measures would you take to ensure housing is a right, which is a tangible climate action?
So this is a personal issue for me. No one should ever be afraid that they're going to be without a home. I had a call from someone in the riding a few days ago. The guy works his 40 hours a week. He's exhausted, very tired over the phone, but he's still not sure if he's going to have a roof over his head, or food on his table at the end of the month. And I've been a renter my whole life too. I know what it's like to be afraid that your landlord is going to raise your rent beyond what you can afford or evict you so that they can sell the property to someone else. It's awful. So housing needs to be a right, and making housing a right is going to require a radical restructuring of our society. But we start today by first meeting the needs of our most vulnerable. So the NDP has a plan to build 500,000 new affordable housing units in the next 10 years, half of that within the next 5, because a plan you can't complete in at least a term, one they might not intend to keep. These will be a mixture of affordable housing units as a requirement of new building construction, funding for co-ops and other housing nonprofits, and direct funding or subsidizing of new affordable housing unit construction. But that can only be the start. That's a good first step. Over 1 in 3 people in Ontario spent more than 1/3 of their income on housing. That is not sustainable. That is not tolerable. So paying not just the cost of maintaining the housing they're in, but filling a landlord's pocket on top of that, like, that shouldn't be the case. The only solution is to increase the stock of affordable housing in every single city in Canada, adopting something like the Vienna model. This will increase people's housing options and cut demand so that house prices finally start to cool off and we can once again treat housing like a necessity instead of a commodity.
Very thoughtful answer. Thank you very much. I just want to make sure everybody knows, some of you have joined after I explained what was happening here. We did invite members of all of the parties that are running in this federal election to join us, and Benjamin Jenkins of the NDP is the only one who even responded. So we are just honoring his commitment to speaking to the public and engaging in the debate by just asking him the questions that we were going to ask all the candidates. So sorry, we tried really hard to get all the candidates. It would be great if other people asked them why they didn't come to speak about the environment at Lake Simcoe. I don't know. So the next question is about Lake Simcoe. Question 6, Lake Simcoe is under increasing pressure from climate impacts as well as urbanization around its shores. To save it, it will require all levels of government to do more than it has historically done, including intervening on projects that are a direct threat to the lake. As such, will you support designating the Bradford Bypass, a 4-lane freeway that cuts through the headwaters of Lake Simcoe in the Greenbelt, for a federal impact assessment? Will you support a cost-sharing agreement? Okay, this is a second question about Lake Simcoe. Will you support a cost-sharing agreement with Ontario to get the Holland River phosphorus reclamation plant online as soon as possible, which will reduce average phosphorus loadings from the Holland River by 40%?
Yes, and yes. In particular, I will commit right now that if I am elected, I will push for the federal government to take over the section of funding for the Holland Marsh phosphorus reclamation plant that York Simcoe backed out of providing. So I want to start here by saying I'm a scientist, I'm a biologist, and as a scientist, I'm trained to look for what people aren't telling me, because that's usually a sign there's something they don't want you to know. And that's about where I feel we are on the Bradford Bypass. The Bradford Bypass was given conditional support by the province in the early 2000s, after 5 years of delays due to uncertainty around the project's impact. And that support was conditional on the performance of environmental impact surveys that have never been done. And now the province and the federal government refuse to do those assessments. The province has even sought to provide an exemption from those assessments and to bypass public consultation entirely. Why? If these projects are as harmless as we are repeatedly told, surely there won't be an issue, will there? What will they do about all the salt rolling onto farmers' fields in the Holland Marsh? What will they do to prevent the added pollution from damaging the drinking water of people living near the highway? Do they have a plan for any of this? Don't you deserve to know? If there's anything I want people to take away from this particular question and think about, it's that when governments and businesses refuse to do environmental assessment and make it available to the public, what is it they don't want you to know? So yes.
Thank you. I hear that. Question 7. During the COVID-19 pandemic, are governments committed to spending what it takes to ensure the safety of our citizens? According to climate and economy experts, we need to spend 2% of our GDP on climate action and green infrastructure, and another 2% on a just transition and social infrastructure to ensure no one's left behind. That would be about 80 billion annually. Given the urgency of the climate emergency, are you prepared to spend what it takes to contribute to the global effort to avoid the worst of the climate crisis and its social and economic impacts?
Yes. There really can't be any other serious answer, can there? It sounds like a lot of money, because it is, but it's the cheaper option. A refusal to spend money today is a guarantee that we're going to have to spend more tomorrow with worse outcomes. It's why the NDP has included sustainability in every single part of its platform, of our platform. It costs far more to mitigate damage than it does to prevent it. And that's true for everything as much as it is for climate change. It's just a question of who pays the costs. The large companies who are happy to make billions during the pandemic while avoiding our taxes, or the average person who sees their food bill rise as agriculture becomes more and more difficult. The average Canadian household has seen their food bills rise about a third in the past year, in no small part due to the heat dome effect that's devastated our central and western provinces and left farms in drought. The federal government does subsidize crop insurance to make sure farmers affected by these losses do not lose their homes and businesses, which is great. But how much more will we have to pay to make sure that we have a secure food supply if events like that start to become a regularity? And that's just the tip of a very rapidly melting iceberg. How much will we have to pay to treat water polluted by increasingly common algal blooms? How much will we have to pay to capture the carbon that builds up with each failed climate target? How much will we have to pay to repair roads buckled by heat, or wires that melt, or homes that have been burned by forest fires? We're going to be paying either way. The question is how much you want to pay. I say it's best we pay now than later and get a cleaner, better world as a part of the deal.
Thank you very much. That concludes the preset questions for our meeting. People in the audience, thank you very much for joining us. If you have questions that were not answered here tonight, I do encourage you to reach out to the candidates. I do want to just give Benjamin 2 more minutes for a closing, and then I will close. Go ahead.
Thank you. So I want to end by saying thank you again. Thank you to the organizers who have given me a chance to speak. It's very much appreciated. And thank you to those of you who have listened all the way to the end. I know the challenges that we are facing are scary, and I in no way wish to downplay them, but I also like to think that tonight I've given you reason to have some hope. There are others out there who think like you do and who will fight for you. We are ordinary people, just like you, who realize that while we might be weak individually, together we are strong. The challenges that we face are going to be monumental, and many of you listening have been deprived of the tools and opportunities you need and deserve to build a better world. But so long as you have breath in your lungs and a mind to think, I promise you that you still have the power to fight and win. So long as you act in solidarity with those around you, you will always have allies. So please reach out, sign up, volunteer if and when you can for the causes you believe in. It is the only way that this world changes. The NDP is here to fight alongside you, to support you through the trying times to come, and they are going to be trying. It is our solemn vow and our sincerest promise to always be the party of the worker, the marginalized, the forgotten. Whether you were born in this country or arrived here from afar like me, Canada can be a home you can be proud of, with clean air, fresh water, and responsible government. And I humbly ask you on September 20th that you cast your vote for a better future. I also ask that this commitment to a better world persists beyond just Election Day and carries you and everyone around you towards a brighter tomorrow. Thank you very much for your time.
Well, thank you to our audience and to Benjamin Jenkins for sharing your time with us tonight. We appreciate the amount of time and work it takes to run a campaign, and we wish you all the best. And of course, I would be saying that to all the other parties if they were here too. We hope that this discussion has helped voters across this riding inform your choices. I understand that this is a very one-sided conversation at the moment, but still, it's important and helpful to listen to what some of the what this candidate has to say. We appreciate that the decline of our environment and climate is distressing and frightening. We do have the power to participate in a democracy, though, and to insist the choices that we make support a livable planet and a healthy community. So we encourage each of you to vote and encourage others to vote as well. Advance polls open on the 10th of September for those who want to vote without crowds, and the official voting day is September 20th. Beyond voting, though, please continue to connect with your future MP and hold them accountable to the promises that you hear in this election campaign.
Please
they
do.
cannot represent you if they never hear from you. This video will we're recording this. This will be hosted on our YouTube channel. I will send out a follow-up email to the registrants, and you can share those with your network. I will also include a link to the Q&As about each of the candidates, the Conservative and Liberal as well, that were in the Bradford Today media. And as I said before, if you didn't get your question answered, please try to get your candidate to reach them if they come to your door. And just one more time, we really did try hard to reach all the parties, and there were lots of individuals tweeting and emailing and phoning. And finally today I had the Conservative Scott Davidson's personal email someone gave me, sorry, personal phone number. So I was texting and phoning. We really tried. So I'm really disappointed that they're not here. I'll leave you to draw your own conclusions about that. Did you want to say one more thing, Benjamin?
I just wanted to add for people who want to vote, you can also vote at any Elections Canada office up to Election Day, I believe. So just another avenue for people who want to vote or drop off their vote, just do it safely as possible.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for that additional information. So I just want to say thanks again to Jen and to Simcoe County Greenbelt Coalition staff and intern who helped to organize this with us as well, while all of us took holidays at very close times, right when the election was called. So thank you again for everyone who attended here tonight. And if you are not familiar with the Rescue Lake Simcoe Coalition, please find us online at rescuelakesimcoe.org or on Twitter or Facebook. Thanks again, and have a good time following this election. Thanks a lot. And